So in this video we're going to be having a look at natural selection. This was Darwin's theory of evolution, and Darwin is a name that you do need to know. So within this example of natural selection, I'm just going to draw my very best giraffes, but also I'm just going to be putting the key words underneath each section, just in terms of space. Okay, so to begin with, the first thing that you always need to remember when you are looking at natural selection is that populations have variation among them. If there is no variation within a population, then natural selection is not going to happen. So these are my beautiful giraffes. They are not llamas, they are not camels, they are my best attempt at a giraffe. Okay, so here we have got variation in this population of giraffes. So please note with this, these are both adult giraffes, but the variation they have is just the length of their neck. This one here has a long neck, this one here has a short neck, and so therefore the variation we're looking at with this is just the length of their necks. Okay, so the other thing with natural selection is that there needs to be an element of competition. So here with these, the competition we're going to have a look at is competition for food, but they might be competing for other things. Just for this example, we're going to be having a look at the giraffes competing for food. Okay, so here we've got two giraffes. Each of them have different neck lengths, so that is the variation within our population. And here we have our tree that they are eating, and therefore they are competing for food. Now everything at the moment is hunky-dory because there is enough food for everyone, and everyone is able to access this food. So what we're going to have a look at now is if this changed so that the food was only found at the very tops of the trees, and this is what is called an environmental change. So this has to happen for natural selection to happen. And an environmental change will mean that some of these different variants will have a survival advantage over others. So they will have some sort of characteristic or some sort of trait which means that they are more likely to survive compared to other organisms. Okay, so here we're going to draw our giraffes again. And remember, we've got our variations, so we've got some with long necks, and then we've got some with shorter necks. Now obviously with this environmental change, what's happened is the food has now become out of reach for this giraffe with the shorter neck. That means that he or she is not going to be able to eat food, and therefore is not going to be able to survive, whereas the giraffe with the long neck has got the survival advantage because it is still able to access the food, so will therefore be able to feed itself and therefore will be able to survive. Now this environmental change can happen for a number of reasons. It might be, in this instance, it might be because there was some sort of drought, so therefore only the trees that had the leaves at the top of them seemed to survive for some reason, or it could be that there was overpopulation of giraffes, so it meant that just the food got eaten a lot quicker, and generally giraffes will probably expend less energy and just go for the lower leaves to begin with. So it could be any kind of thing that causes this environmental change, but the environmental change will then mean that certain organisms within that population will have a survival advantage and some will have a disadvantage. And in this case, the long-necked giraffes have an advantage, short-necked giraffes have a disadvantage. This means that over time, so we've still got our trees that have the leaves at the top of them. But now, because we've got these long-necked giraffes that have survived, they will then reproduce and they will pass on their characteristics to the next generation. So that means that the population will start to change to look like these guys, the long-necked giraffes. Now this is a gradual change over time. This doesn't happen overnight. It's very slow in terms of the changes. And so with these two long-necked giraffes, they can still access the food, so they're still going to be able to survive. So here we've got long-necked giraffes. They survive. They can then reproduce. And they will also pass on their genes. And some of their genes will code for the characteristic of this long neck, and therefore very likely their offspring will also have long necks as well. This then leads to a population change. So that mostly the giraffes have long necks. So with this, I've just put the key terms here. So remember, at the start of natural selection, there must be variation within a population. These organisms will then compete with each other for a number of different resources. So the example we've used in this is obviously food. There'll be some sort of environmental change, and in this example what happened was the leaves, which were all over the tree, now became just at the top of the tree, and it could be for many different reasons. Example could be not enough nutrients or water for the plant, so therefore they limit their leaves right to the top, where that is where the most sunlight is. Or it could be because this population overbred, so there was too many offspring and therefore too many eating the food, and therefore limited food. So this environmental change gives a survival advantage to one of these variations, and in this case the long-necked giraffe has the survival advantage because it is able to reach these top leaves on the tree. These ones with the shorter necks are not able to reach the tops of the trees, therefore they will not really survive, and therefore will not reproduce and will not pass on their genes to the next generation. Whereas the long-necked giraffes will survive, they will then reproduce and they will pass on their genes, and therefore the population will change so that mostly the giraffes will have long necks.